Hey Mad Minders, thanks for tuning in to Mad Minds TV. This week's study was on crisis management. 7 scholarly papers reviewed, and I gravitated toward a paper called Integrating Brain Science into Crisis Leadership Development. The paper was published in 2018, and it was written by Eric McNulty, Barry Dorn, Richard Serino, Eric Gorelnik, Jennifer Grimes, Lisa Flynn, Srinivasa Pillai, and Leonard Marcus. The reference for the paper is below as well. The paper surveys 198 professionals in the crisis management field in the United States. It wants to identify the type of training received to get a better understanding of crisis management and why decisions are made, when they're made, and how they're made in times of crisis. The paper identifies a term called brain science, and that's a combination of neuroscience and psychological research. The paper touches on the definition of crisis management, the type of training currently being offered in the crisis management fields, as well as how brain science can be used in crisis management leadership development, and how it also can be used to identify leaders that may lead well during times of crisis. As I read this paper, I got very excited based off my background, because it is in crisis management. One of the things I'm going to take away from this paper is a quote, which is, "Closing the gap between intention and performance is a function of meta leadership." And that's very deep. If you're not familiar with what meta leadership is, here's a screenshot. My experience dealing with meta leadership and meta leaders is that they're typically people who are very self-aware, have a high level of emotional and social intelligence, they're confident, they're respected, and they have experience in the areas they've been put in charge of when it comes to crisis management. If crisis management is something you're interested in, I would definitely recommend checking out this paper. However, I'm aware in today's business environment, crisis management may be more about dealing with social media shenanigans as well as product recalls. Now, when it comes to my professional experience with crisis management, that's what my professional experience is crisis management. And the fascinating part about that is that's why I'm going to keep this focused, because I could talk all day about it. One of the things that was beaten to our heads for crisis management during training is that your lowest level of training will always come out in high stress situations. Or another way to put that is, during increased levels of stress and duress, people resort back to their lowest level of training. As I watched people in and outside of the uniform, I took it a step further. Under high levels of stress and duress, people resort back to their lowest level of thinking. And with that mindset, I bought my first brain book that was called The Brain Bible. And after that, I bought Positivity. And then I bought a book called Harmonic Wealth. Then The Male Brain, The Female Brain, Body Language, and so on. You can get the picture. This is something that I truly believe can be trained into anybody. But with anything training-wise, it's about how much energy the people you're trying to train or develop are willing to put in themselves and willing to actually put in the material to make sure the final product is what was expected. The fascinating part about brain science, or this paper, is that if this is something that truly fascinates you, all the data that you would want or need, you have over the last 2 years. The globe has been in crisis management since 2020, and every global leader did something different. And the question is, why? Did they make a decision based off resources? Did they make a decision based off personality traits? Did they make a decision because somebody else was nudging them to make that decision for their benefit or somebody else's? Nobody really knows, but the last 2 years are going to be looked at for the next 100. and all the questions asked are going to be great for data, but they may not be great for specific leaders of specific countries once time goes on. However, if you're going to do the data research, this is something you'll be able to tell us all in maybe a few years. Now that I've shared, of course, I'm going to ask if you're willing to share with me your experiences in crisis management, your experiences with meta leadership. Do you think that fitness is important when it comes to crisis management and crisis leadership? Do you think resource is important? Or does a lack of resources just automatically create innovation in crisis because you have to will that innovation into existence based on the lack of resources? Regardless of your answers, I appreciate the comments. I appreciate the feedback because I know crisis management is a very big deal. As always, these videos are just me thinking out loud and by no means advice and or guidance on how to live your life or manage your crisis. And whatever you do, don't forget to stay mad and to be well. Thanks again, and I'll see you next week.